Okay, so I'm not hearing much talking, so let's just go over. The idea is you can kind of see how much some of these things pop up throughout your paper, the important parts of your paper. So we've got the word hypothesis, and how many times did people find that? How many times in the outline? 0?
I didn't count, but
Okay, but you can see that you mentioned it in the introduction. You've got hypothesis. At least I got to cheat and use Control F and find it 2 times in the introduction, 1 time in the results, and 2 times in the discussion. So you can see, like, that's kind of what I mean with cohesiveness, that what you're doing is you're able to, like, you're streaming these things throughout the paper. So, and I think one of the other words, let's just try question. Because one thing like is that question will be maybe your survey questions and your research question, but you can see that, you know, that word pops up, like, I think in the first 2 sections, so introduction, methods, as well as the discussion. So you're thinking, I think mostly it's like the research questions, but, you know, in the survey and the methods, you're doing the discussion or the survey questions, which are going to be different. So I have that as kind of a demonstration to think about, like, how you know, you need to, like, tie these things together, and it needs to be consistent. So when you're talking about your hypothesis in the introduction, that needs to be the same hypothesis that you're mentioning in your discussion part, and also needs to be you know, that you're, like, written in a way that kind of reminds your reader and keeps them, like, going along. So another thing, so when we're thinking about cohesiveness, how is the paper broken down? What are the different parts? We've got the whole paper, and then what comes next?
IMRD.
Yes, so the different sections. So yeah, we've got the IMRD, and then what's within each section? What are the units within each section?
Oh.
Within, like, the introduction, what's the next way you would break it down?
Hypothesis.
That's not in every one, though. We're thinking about the units of writing. So not sentences, but you have multiple sentences, and they make a paragraph. Yeah. So they make a paragraph, and then what comes after that? I kind of just get sentence, and then what makes up sentences? Words, yes. Okay, so you need to, we're doing this spiraling down method where you start big, you start at the whole paper, and then go to the section, and go to the different sections. So that means that if we're following along on our lovely handout, you can put the order here. You have the whole paper, that's number 1. Then you've got, what is it? Oh, did I not? Oh, I did it wrong. So cross this out. I put paper here, but put section. And then put that second. And then you got paragraph third. And then you've got sentence. And then word. So these are the different sections of your paper. Sorry about that snafu. But then I want you to think, like, okay, you have to edit these. Okay, you have to make sure that they're, like, kind of coherent throughout. So here are different sections of engaging questions that I want you to think about. Okay, when you're editing your whole paper, which sections are going to be helpful for you to refer to so that you can write a paper, so that you are editing, and I can say, yep, your whole paper is cohesive. You have written the different parts really well. You've written the parts so that they flow together really well. Which one would you use? Which sections would you use? You can use section or sections. Which one do you think might be the most helpful? Would it be like working on sentences?
The Charlie person.
What's that? That's going to be most helpful when you're like working on sentences. So that you can go ahead and put working on what was that? Working on sentences. You can put that for A. How about like this whole paper? Which one do you think is going to be most helpful? B. So the proofreading, what they go over here in the proofreading section is actually very fine details. So like that's going to be best when you're like at the sentences or the words. So you can call it proofreading, but the section itself goes over like the very small fine details. So that's going to be best when you're looking at words and you're looking at sentences. Any idea about the whole paper? D. Yeah, D is going to be really helpful. And then how about anything else for this one? Probably also connecting paragraphs. So E is going to be helpful. And then these are also going to apply the same for the sections because they don't distinguish between like section is a unit we've come up with. How about paragraph? What's going to help us write paragraphs? C, yeah. So think about using these sections, and if you're going through, okay, I'm going to edit my whole paper. Look at D and E first, like these sections of your of the textbook, and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to edit my paragraph. So go on C, and then after that, work on B, and then maybe A as well, or A and B, so that you have those, you're able to look at some more details. Next thing is I want to look at these two questions, and I want you to think about them because another part of cohesion and having like a cohesive paper is it's not just continuity, but it's also going to be logical critical thinking. So if you make a conclusion based on evidence and ideas that you've presented. So if someone says like, okay, people like Instagram the most, so that's where people get their news, is that a logical conclusion? Why is that not a logical conclusion?
Because they might not look at news.
Yeah, they might not.
Personal thing or not.
Yeah, if you ask, where do you get your news, and they say Instagram, then you can say that. But if you say, where do you get your news the most, or what social media do you use the most, and you answer, and people answer Instagram, that's what they use for social media. You don't know if they use that for news. So that's going to be something that's important. So right now, just take a moment, and what I want you to do is look at these questions right here. So what are some real life, so outside of class experiences, when you use critical thinking? How can you apply those lessons here? And then what sections will critical thinking be most important? One thing I want to say is that I think you guys are probably also like using lots of critical thinking. One thing I'm thinking about is social media. So in social media, I'm old, so I may use social media very differently than some of you guys, but if you post a tweet or you have Facebook or anything, and you say something like global warming is not real, do you think people will respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll get a lot of hateful, you'll probably get a lot of angry comments. Like, if you were to say, and there's more controversial and less controversial things you can say. Like, I could post cats are the best animal ever. Would I probably get a lot of responses arguing with me? Yeah. So think about, think about when you're writing something. If you were to post that on social media, would someone argue with you and say, hey, this is not accurate. Here's an article that supports, why this isn't accurate. Think about it like that. Use that mentality when you're writing your paper. So go ahead and take a moment and have conversations. It seems like everyone's kind of dead today, but have some conversations. Think about, how can you apply, what are some other situations? Maybe you can talk about when someone was really mean to you in the comments on social media. Again, I don't know if I'm older, so I don't know if that's how how social media is used these days, and then also what sections will you use the most. So how about, can I get, how about U5 over here, have a conversation, U4 and U3, go ahead and have a conversation.